Anyway, I'm Eivind Fivelsdal, as we call it in Norway. I did see the Norway grants here in the slide. Just have to inform you that we are running out of oil, and it's very likely. And Greta Thunberg, she wants us to stop selling it, so we won't be rich for very much longer. Anyway, I'm Eivind Fivelsdal. I live in Oslo, Norway. About myself, I'm 61 years of age. I used to be a musician. But the last 26 years I have been working with youth crime prevention in one of Oslo's 15 districts. Apart from the local work, I also participate in various international collaborations for the city, especially on subjects like radicalization and violent extremism. My plan here today is to give you an outline of what SaLTo is in Oslo. For one, and then I will try to, let's see if we can get this to work first. Which it don't. Okay, that's good. Especially on, come on, yeah, for one, and then I'll try to explain some of our efforts dealing with juvenile repeat offenders and also share some generic information on how to structure crime preventions, because well, people are from all over Estonia here, and anyway, however, the first thing I need to explain is this SaLTo thing. Now, SLT, that's an acronym for Coordination of Local Anti-Drug and Crime Preventive Measures. It was introduced in Norway early in the 90s by the National Crime Prevention Council, KRÅD it was called. However, the Danes were first. In Denmark, the acronym is SSP, roughly translates to School, Social and Police. And back in 2008, the SLT model was subject to 2 separate evaluations, which deemed the SLT model rather well. The model is now currently incorporated throughout about 200 Norwegian municipalities. However, it's also noteworthy that the Danes also created some extra opportunities in their legislation, laws that Norway did not incorporate. I will return to that later. In Oslo, however, we tend to make our own names on everything we do, so we are calling our model SaLTo. And that's an acronym for Together We Make Oslo Safe, even though the national acronym SLT is hinted in the capitals. Anyway, SaLTo is exactly the same thing as SLT. The SLT model is divided into 3 levels. The managing level, like steering groups, the coordinating level, and execution or practical level. The managing level will be a number of local top leaders from the municipality and the police. Anyway, this is the most common organization in Norway. Also worth noticing, the police is run by the state and not the counties, like for instance in the United States of America. Then we have the coordinating level. This is typically middle managers from the municipality and the police. And finally, the executive level, which is typically everybody who is working directly with children and youth within the various departments that participate in the SLT network. Throughout these 3 levels, one is sure to share the responsibilities, the coordination, and the execution of the preventive efforts. Needless to say, perhaps, but to get this to work, there has to be somebody who is responsible for managing this system. Also, this person will be responsible for analysis, sharing knowledge, and be a secretary at the regular meetings this model obviously prescribes. And that is the SLT coordinator, or SaLTo coordinator, as we call it in Oslo. There are 18 of us in Oslo, 1 for each of the 15 districts or boroughs, 1 for the center at Oslo, and 1 in the education agency. I mean, although Oslo has 15 more or less self-governed districts, the responsibility for the schools are not a part of that, which of course emphasizes the need of an SLT model even more. Knowing what SLT is of course important. But equally important, it is to understand what it is not. It is a model for coordination. It is not a program of specific activities. If one thought that, it would quite soon be regarded as a program that drains the public sector of its resources and its funds. Also, to make it work, one will have to employ the coordinator, as I said, and the coordinator is not to become a leader of certain activities, but he or she has to be an inspirator and a driving force towards the practitioners from the participating services, striving for a better effect in a system where every different stakeholder, where the different stakeholders support and complement each other's work. Therefore, it's self-evident that SLT is an exercise in building trust and confidence across sectors, and SLT is about building networks. The Norwegian model has some flaws opposed to the original Danish models. Norway did not import. No, we did import the main structure, but we did not incorporate the associated laws. Thing is, Danish law allows for more elaborate sharing of information across the sectors, whereas back in Norway, all the participants are quite heavily restrained by professional confidentiality. This, and only this, is what I personally regard as the Achilles heel of the Norwegian model. So if you ever plan on incorporating something like our model, I urge you to study Danish law on these matters first. Right then, back to Oslo. The coordination of crime preventive efforts will only work at its best if it's firmly anchored at the top of the municipality and within the police. And to make this work, a conscious political will is required. The police commissioner and the mayor must be represented at the top level of the SLT model. This is the organizational chart of SaLTo in Oslo. And at the top, we find the Oslo Police Council, led by the city council leader. You don't have to read that, actually. Among others, we find the head of the police in Oslo and some of his guys. And the police council is also a steering group for SaLTo. Then every district in Oslo have its own local steering group. Some districts have joined their efforts in a more regional steering group. Then there are us, the 17 SLT or SaLTo coordinator, and Alna, where I work, is number 12, so figure number 12, if you count, must be me, I think. Yeah. Anyway, that little figure, very little. Among our tasks, running local work groups is of importance. And at the sites of this, you find the various participants in the cooperation, and that would be specialist healthcare, prisons, the police stations. We have 5 local police stations in Oslo. Then there is welfare, schools, education, and so on. You know, when the SaLTo model was established, there was a debate. Should the coordinator be located at the police station, or would it be better to put a coordinator in each of the 15 districts? One of the city, one in the city center, and one in the education agency. Well, the difference would have been 5 to 17. It's a lot cheaper to have 5 coordinators than the 17 of us. However, the decentralized model was chosen, and there is a reason for it. That way, the coordinator was closer to the resources of the public sector. And that would have not been the case if the coordinator was located at the police station. So I need to speed up things a little bit from here. We do have a vision. You can read that. Hope you understand English, all of you. If not, the translator back there will have to speed things up as well. And we have some, well, quite obvious main objectives. The Oslo model's key documents are an annual action program, an annual trend report on juvenile crime, and this report has become an important planning tool for the city of Oslo as a whole. The politicians look into it when they are planning their annual budgets. Then there are, of course, annual reports from the participating districts. We have local action plans, and we develop miscellaneous guides on some subjects. Finally, we also produce some specific action plans on certain subjects, such as hate crime and violent extremism. Within the field of hate crime and violent extremism, we have also developed routines and guides. One of these is also available in English, although I do think it's ripe for a revision at this moment. So, SaLTo, as you see, is a model for coordination. It's also a networking model, and the intersectoral networks of importance are of importance in this model. Both central and locally, we have established various networks of cooperation and coordination. There are some 800 employees in Oslo City, the police and other cooperating services involved in this model. Prioritized matters are dealt with within the specific intersectoral focus groups. So if we have certain problems, we develop a focus group. So all this is fine, perhaps, but what is crime prevention anyway? To me, it seems like each and every one of us have our own opinion on how to define the concept of crime prevention. So I thought I'd like to share a little bit with you, so we're sort of on level here. Some of you will know this, and some of you will not. This is my favorite one. I like this definition because it works very well within the context of freedom and democracy. They are the words of a Norwegian professor in criminology, Per Stangeland, and he's saying crime prevention is actions that will reduce crime or the fear of crime without dramatic intervention in our way of life and without serious side effects for the society. These are good guidelines, actually. I mean, it's possible to induce a level of control that makes crime virtually impossible, but who would like to live their lives under such a regime? Therefore, great care should be taken when planning for and performing necessary control activities. But maybe not as far as this example. In 2014, our authorities introduced a ban on preventive drug control using drug dogs or narcotic detection dogs in our schools. Now they need a concrete suspicion, which has nothing to do with prevention, actually, or information on doing it. I find that very hard to accept. One of these dogs are able to keep narcotic substances out of quite a number of schools, and it's cheap. It doesn't cost that much. The reason why it was banned, students were complaining about being suspects. They were not. And others were just saying they were afraid of dogs. Now, in 2019, we can see the results. We have more drugs in schools in Oslo. Anyway, crime prevention is usually divided into two main groups. That's the social crime prevention and the situational crime prevention. The police sector, they are very familiar with the situational one, and social workers, they are very good on social crime prevention. But to get us all on level, I quite briefly describe them, and some of this you may have encountered during your education, and some not. We divide them into these two main groups. Social crime prevention, we can say that actions that try and account to the reasons for crime, like social problems and individual reasons. The target group for social crime prevention is like all children and youth, their families, the public sector as a whole, including the schools. And you can divide social crime prevention into three main groups of measures. This is, in fact, exactly the same as we are using in the public health sector. Universal measures, actions aimed at the population as a whole, or in our case, all children and youth. It's very hard to measure concrete effects from a universal approach, although some studies have proven statistically that this is where you get the best return from your investments. And you will have to look up on this American called Geoffrey Rose to find out more about that. Then there is selective measures. Here we will choose our target groups more carefully. We are talking about groups we assume are at risk. They are fewer. This fact alone makes it easier to measure the effect of actions and measures. And the last group is indicated measures. That's repair work. Typically, this will be actions aimed at youth of higher risk. In practice, almost always youth with a known risk or problem. This group, not only criminal, mind you, because in this group we also include victims into this group. It's quite easy to measure the effect of this group because the actions are taken on an individual basis. Then we have the last main group of crime prevention, which is the situational crime prevention, where the setting and the situation is what gets us our focus. Situational crime prevention is very much easier to understand, but it is also quite smart. And we'll mainly circle around these 5 principles. It's all very American, actually. First, increase the effort of crime. A strategy aimed at creating conditions that makes crime more difficult to commit. Examples are secure systems of payment, control of access, or other measurements, creating obstacles that a criminal must pass to achieve his or her goals. And second, increase the risk of crime. And that is the actions that increase the risk of being caught. And actions that are carried out if a criminal is caught. There is nothing gained by catching a criminal in the act if nothing happens afterwards. Some examples on actions are police patrolling, establishing civic patrols, CCTV, reducing the number of dismissals, and etc. Some actions are cheap, others may require significant economic resources. Thirdly, reduce the rewards of crime. That's marking identity of objects, reducing the cash one carries in one wallet, increase use of electronic payment, and secure inexpensive objects in a way that destroys them should anybody try to steal them. And the fourth and fifth is perhaps most important to youth. That will be like reduce the provocations and remove temptations. The examples on this is polite staff in shops and public services, quick removal of graffiti and taggings, programs that teach about conflicts like street mediation and conflict mediation. And finally, the fifth, removal of the excuses. And that's something that we have been working with in our district to some extent. I mean, the actions that makes rules clear and visible. Sufficient number of public waste bins available, sufficient usage of science, that we do have anti-bullying programs in schools, that there are drug and alcohol-free arenas for youth, like youth clubs, and also programs that aimed at reducing the youth's tendency to sort of demonize their victims. I mean, he looked at me, so I beat him up. When doing SLT and SaLTo, one should take both situational and social crime prevention into account when planning for an SLT model. Anyway, this is Oslo, and the yellow marked area is my district, the district of Alna. This is where I do most of my work. We have a population of some 49.5 thousand souls, and of these, some 54% are migrants. In Alna, we also find Furuset, where most of the population are immigrants, and some 35% of the population in that area are under 35 years of age. So it's quite a young place, which is good for me to work because I'm getting old. During the years before SLT in Oslo and throughout 2014, we had a reduction in crime, especially juvenile crime in Oslo. And one spot, Furuset, was especially noticed because the drop in the crime rates at Furuset was second to amazing. What made that change, I'm sorry, belongs to another presentation, but my point here is that from 2015 and onwards, we have in Oslo and also in the district of Alna and Furuset an increase in juvenile crime, including violence. It's not a dramatic increase in juvenile crime, but nevertheless, it's significant. We also found that the increase in crime rate was was committed by repeat young offenders. Clearly, we had to try to deal with this new situation. Now, before we continue, our definition of juvenile repeat offenders is like this. You need to have committed 4 or more criminal offenses within 1 year. This will put you on a list. This list is mostly for statistical use because the repeat offenders we really care about are those we are most worried about, of course. And that requires that you know something about them. It's actually possible to get on this list during one single incident. One intoxicated youth could easily make 4 criminal offenses in about 5 minutes. They do, however, account for about 50% of the registered crimes in Oslo at this point. In Norway, youth under 15 years of age will not be prosecuted. Offenses will be investigated by the police, and then the case will be sent to child welfare, child protection. We try to avoid putting youth under 18 years of age in jail. Instead, they are offered various alternatives, which all involve systematic follow-up routines, contracts, etc. And also notice that for youth between 15 and 18, the justice system is also activated. And justice takes time, way too much time, especially if you are young of age. Clearly, we need something more, and how we got there is also worth telling. Have some of you ever used Google Design Sprint? No? Okay, I'll tell you then. In a design sprint, the point with this is actually to do within 1 week what you normally would spend 6 months on developing. In a design sprint, 5 people block their calendars and sit down for a full week. And the agenda is this. On Monday, we map out the problem. We start with the end. What is the best case scenario? What can go wrong? We talk to the experts because we are only 5 people, so we need to speak to, we would like a larger group, but we can call them in as experts, and then we interview them. Monday ends with agreeing on the problem. Tuesday, we start sketching solutions. First, we do it alone, then we present it to each other, then we go home. On Wednesday, we do a constructive criticism of the solution. We make a storyboard, and we decide which solution we should take with us into Thursday. And on Thursday, we are prototyping. Then we make, and we draw up the solution. Some of the slides I will show you afterwards is just pure translations from this week in February. And on Friday, we test this solution by interviewing people for whom it is supposed to work. And who are they? That would be like child protection, child welfare, it would be police, it would be, of course, criminal youth, and some directors as well. And then from there, we make a plan for implementation, and then we start implementing it. And from here, my speech will be about the result of that week. It's a model that we have now implemented. At this point, it's a pilot project, and if successful, we will implement it on a permanent basis. This model tries to deal with two problems. One is the fact that some youth are classified as juvenile repeat offenders several years in a row. Their very existence several years in a row proves the fact that whatever actions that have been taken earlier, it is not working. Secondly, if the sheer number of juvenile repeat offenders are to drop, and we have to start a little bit before they are listed in these statistics that I mentioned earlier. So if not, you will not be able to affect the number of repeat offenders at all. And that's why we will have to emphasize on the degree of concern and use this as a guiding tool when we decide on whom to offer this SaLTo follow-up. The why is quite simple. Increasing number of youth who commit repeated crime, increased number of serious crime, violence, threats, robbery, dealing with drugs, and sadly, the numbers are still rising. There were also rumors that juveniles can carry on without any consequences among the youth themselves, but also in the national media. And that fact alone is a problem. And it has something to do with that legal process that is time-consuming. For young people, stuff takes way too much time. So we identified an urgent need to speed up the process. A significant number of young repeat offenders will, over time, also cause a heavy financial burden on the public sector and the welfare system. So we agreed on some self-evident objectives: reduced juvenile crime, reduced number of young repeat offenders, and we also made an intermediate objective: a more efficient collaboration between the district, schools, and the police. Now, research on successful projects aimed at youth crime show that one needs to focus on safe and confident adults in the lives of the young offenders. The daily life needs to consist of activities with meaning, enhancing the competence on life itself. And in addition, a number of studies emphasize the significance of a well-established cross-sectional cooperation, and that the youth themselves get the opportunity to be heard. It is important here to notice that today's alternative reactions to imprisonment and punishment in Norway, they are voluntary. I mean, you may choose prison, if you like. But whatever your choice, it is also self-evident that it will take a very long time from the day of the criminal offense itself to the day something actually happens within the legal system. This is, of course, due to the extreme care the justice system has to take to ensure nobody is wrongfully convicted. One worst case example: a 16-year-old kid is charged, and he does not get a conviction until he is already 18. That's 2 years. For me, that's the day after tomorrow. But for this 18-year-old, 2 years is a very long time. So during that time, one or two possible scenarios are possible. One, he is beyond repair. Two, he has a good life, and there is, for his part, really no need for any reaction or punishment at all. But based on the fact that the alternative reactions are voluntary, we thought that maybe it would be possible to offer the youth and his or her family the same close follow-up as the legal system would end up with anyway, at an earlier stage, after perhaps only 1 week. So what we suggested was, we will offer the youth and family a close follow-up within a week, and within that week we have decided who is to be given priority in a system like this. Now, who are we? Okay, that would be the police and the child protection system. And to make this work, we suggested that the child welfare created a coordinating function, a specialist within child welfare who is responsible of building a team around the young person and hook up all necessary instances like school, leisure activities, healthcare, anger management, mediation, and we are simply calling this My Team. Secondly, the police creates a similar coordinating function, and these two, one person in the police and one person in the child welfare, should have sufficient authorization to make a decision on who this is to be offered to. These functions could be incorporated within existing positions in the police and the child protection system, and should not need any extra extra financial funding. But in order to get to work as soon as humanly possible, an expert social worker is activated. A social worker is activated. A social worker that, on a very short notice, can start working on building a relation to the youth in question. This also happens within that first week. This means that the actual follow-up is active before the coordinator within the child welfare has built this team. We are calling this SaLTo follow-up just to have branded it separately from other and quite similar measures that may come at a later stage. I will also show how the legal system may benefit from this approach. It was not our intention to invent a totally new methods, but to improve the coordination of activities to actually save time. Youth committing repeat offenses, they are gradually getting more expensive, especially child welfare and child protection. And the rest of the Norwegian welfare system when they pass 18 years of age. For instance, when they are released from a prison. Our aim was to create a system where the public sector puts in more efforts and financial resources at the beginning of a follow-up plan, with the aim of mobilizing the youth's the young person's own resources gradually. And to make this work, we of course needed a system, and I think you know where I'm getting at. We need a system that is as simple as we can make it. We also need a binding agreement between the cooperating offices. And then, of course, the functions that I mentioned earlier. And it's mandatory that the coordinator in the child welfare have access to a number of expert social workers. Now, that's the financial catch with this one. Likewise, it's mandatory that the police officer has a mandate to, on the behalf of the police, to collaborate with the officer within the child welfare when decisions on who to prioritize are taken. So now we have weekly contacts between our child welfare authority and the police. Both parts in this collaboration are to have appointed persons for this job. This to ensure that they get to know each other. One may look at this as a sort of a tool to facilitate for building trust. Workers today are busy, so we will not require them to meet up in person every week. A telephone call is fine. The purpose of this talk is to share information on new and serious cases of crime and concerns. It is possible during this talk to make a decision on SaLTo follow-up. The rig has one important purpose, and that is saving time. Again, because young persons have a totally different perception of time than, well, for me. I'm 61, as I told you. It's really old, actually. So we're aiming for a system that takes this fact into account. Oh, well. Next, who does what? Well, the coordinator at the child welfare will contact the family and explain the purpose of this inquiry. Clarifies time and place for the first meeting. Explains about a declaration of consent, because we need that. There is also various motivational factors that may be considered. For instance, participating in a SaLTo follow-up will not hurt the youth's case in a court of law. Most likely the other way around. Also, the police may have seized the youth's mobile phone and may offer to return it at an earlier stage than usual, and so on. I mean, one will have to be rather creative on finding the right and correct motivational keys. A somewhat critical moment for this model as such is the first meeting with the family. It may well be that 5 minutes, they say, well, maybe it will work. It may well be that also the police should participate in this meeting. It may also include the school. The school will, regardless of this, get connected at a later stage, the following week, in fact. The objective with the first meeting is to get a written consent to start the SaLTo follow-up and, of course, get the legal stuff in order. This is a moment where the police and the child welfare service must support each other to their very best. Of course, the seriousness of this matter must also be a subject, and in case of dealing with immigrants, an interpreter may also be required. Likewise, it's stressed that it's not a replacement for what may happen later, when the case is fully investigated by the police and the legal process is inevitably will follow. But one equally stresses that this is a golden opportunity to show a willingness to change. When a written consent is in place, the social workers start up without any delay. So let's assume that the young person in question and the family has accepted the offer. The coordinator sketch up what's to happen next and start working on getting the necessary team members on board. The social worker starts working in addition to social activities, or more correctly, during social activities. The social worker will map out the network for this particular youth, find possible pitfalls, and identify pro-social connections. For this, the social worker uses a specific toolbox. We are now about 1.5 weeks into the process. The survey is ongoing and the youth are followed up on a daily basis. Appointments are made with the instances that we need to participate in my team, and this is important. All the parties who have signed an agreement on SaLTo follow-up also have the responsibility to ensure that their organization is ready to participate. If child welfare coordinator is experiencing any resistance, delays, or postponements, well then this tight schedule that this model is depending on would fail. And as well, the model as such. The basic idea of this model is to start up quite massive, to be able to mobilize the youth's own resources together in a partnership with the youth himself. Likewise, all the various public services participating in this project have a responsibility to support each other, making each other better. This, of course, requires firm anchoring at the top of each of the participating organizations. The plan is like a contract between the participating parts, including the family and the young person in question. This plan should also include some of the young person's own list of wishes. It's collected into a plan, and the youth's own plan. It's tailored, it's a customized plan, and you may see some example of content of such a plan within the blue field there. During the process of SaLTo follow-up here, visualized with a wheel ticking away, the youth is further followed up. Information is shared and reports are being produced for the coordinator within the child welfare service. The SLT coordinator, and that would be me, and of course the police. There are meetings in my team, and from time to time one may need to sharpen or tighten the grip somewhat. At the right there is a suggestion of possible outcomes and results, like from all is well to the worst one. I will skip talking about them now and move to my last slide, which is, let's summarize. Our objective is to reduce the juvenile crime, and we want to reduce the number of youth who commit repeated crime. We are doing this by making the cooperation between the district, the schools, and the police more efficient. But we identified a need for some experts, workers who know their subject and have frequently contact with each other. A selection is performed each week, and there's a startup for new candidates to SaLTo follow-up accordingly. The police and child welfare system are central actors in this stage, and a comprehensive follow-up system is administered within 7 days. First out is an expert social worker. That's the key of get going fast. and then by adding more actors in the youth's new team. Parallel with this process, something else is happening. The police are doing their work, investigating, securing evidence, prosecution officers are involved, and decisions are made in the judicial system. A majority of these cases will end up with alternatives to prison. In Norway, this is called youth follow-up and youth punishment. But for the young person who is experiencing this, there is no significant difference to SaLTo follow-up, thus meaning that our model will be of great assistance to the conflict council's youth coordinator, who more or less are presented with a ready-made table. Give or take some minor adjustments that they may want, and this will save them a lot of time as well. And they have agreed on this. For the young person in question, a speedy process is by all means both important and essential. And we all believe that, we believe, I mean, not all of us, we believe that SaLTo follow-up also will increase the youth and our society's chances for a positive outcome. In my district, we are currently working with 4 juvenile repeat offenders, and a 5th has already been dismissed with no more additions to his criminal record. Thank you.